All righty. Good morning. Happy holiday weekend. I hope you guys had a good day. Last couple of days. On Monday, I thought we ended on a very high note on what we were looking at in Nehemiah, and I really enjoyed hearing Barbara's uh, talk about the breach in the wall. You know, when we look at that scripture, we've always thought of the negative part of the wall being down, and the highlight of it is the wall being rebuilt. But the rebuilding of the wall really is the uh the part two of that. That's the latter part of what needs to be celebrated and what needs to be observed. And so we got into the significance of the necessity of the wall being breached and what the breach really was. So any questions about that or about anything? Anything catch your attention this week or last couple of days that you'd like to discuss or mention?
Morning, family. This is Evelyn.
Good morning.
Can we recap on the the breach of the wall? What did you just say?
Yeah, Barbara,
She's not on.
she's not on. Um,
I don't see a number, man.
huh?
I don't see her number.
He doesn't see her phone number in the list.
Okay. Uh, does somebody want to recap for us from last Monday? Or if,
I just wanted to know the definition of the breaching of the wall.
well, I'll go into it a little bit. From what I remember her saying, breach is talking about a tear, something in the wall, and what we started off looking at was when they were going through the ancestral lineages for each group, because they looked at the gatekeepers, they looked at the singers, they looked at the priesthood. It was in the priesthood that they noticed that there was some irregularities. Rather, there was no history of their lineage within the priesthood. So that was the real breach. There was there was no consistency on searching for truth. Truth had become compromised and had been infiltrated with religion. And these are my words, okay? And that was looking at it from a metaphorical perspective, that was the breach. So that's when things really start to unravel. Okay, so when we look at that, and we've always talked about celebrating what that rebuilding of the wall, because Nebuchadnezzar come and he carried them into captivity. It was their it is the religion that we follow that creates the strength of a Nebuchadnezzar, that we are carried away uh, uh, based on allowing ourselves to walk away from truth and becoming something and pursuing something other than what the creator intended for us to pursue. And that's what weakens us, and that's what allows us uh to be captured by something that is untrue. And I just got a text saying Barbara's on. I'll let her recap because I think she can sum that up a lot better than I can. Barbara, you on? Can you recap what you said Monday about the breach, the hole in the wall, please?
Oh, I'll try.
Okay.
Um, Let me see if I can remember what I said about the breach. The breach Give me a minute, Ron.
Okay, no problem.
Uh,
Evelyn,
okay.
yeah, okay. We're coming back. We're going to come back to your question, Evelyn. Good question, because that really is the foundation of where we're going today. That's going to lead us into the next part of our discussion.
Ron,
Yes, ma'am.
go ahead with what you were saying. Maybe you'll tap her memory.
Okay, Barbara, what I was trying to say, what I got out of what you were saying last week was the breach in the wall wasn't caused by Nebuchadnezzar as we see it. We've always been taught to look at that from a historical perspective, but the breach was when the priesthood was compromised and they started being more religious than searching for truth. So that is what weakened them to the point that they could be manipulated and caught up in a religious type or mindset that they did not understand anymore who they are. So that's kind of what I saw what you were saying.
Gotcha. I'm with you.
Yeah.
We talked about the fact that things that had defiled the priests, and they this is talking about a mindset. That's what the breach is really talking about.
Yeah.
Spiritually, a mindset. And those who claim to be officiants or doers or men of God, if you will, or those who speak for the divine, but they don't have any empathy. They've lost that sense of what we tap into now. As Kathy said, the joy of who they were or who their ancestors were originally. And they began to do things just based on materialistic or physical kinds of things. And so they made judgments without the empathy, without the loving kindness, without understanding and remembering that the people over whom they officiated were the same as them in terms of spirituality. And I know I'm saying this a little differently, but the issue still is the same. All of the breaches occurred because of a change in how they officiated, what they were doing, and the intent with which they were doing it. And so, as we talked, I talked about the fact that it rang in me, it resonated in me. Who told you you were naked? Who told you you were naked? Which goes back to the story in Genesis. Who told you in the first place that you were naked? How did you come about this information? In other words, that the Creator was saying, you have always been covered. You have always been covered. You have never been uncovered. It is you who strayed away. And so in some cases, it was the priest who led the people away, who told them different things, who put into effect all these laws and things that made it difficult for people to live in joy. So it was basically a mindset.
Yeah.
So Ron, is this considered as what we call a fall from grace? And I'm just using that word, which means that we lowered our vibration by with that mindset.
I agree with that, but at the same time, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, that term to me is negative, and a fall to me says this thing is full of ebbs and flows, and sometimes the couple doesn't grow closer together unless they have a disagreement sometimes. Those disagreements are necessary. Those are these falls, as we call them, these these things that happen to it, strengthen us. And the question becomes, are we in the same, would we gain the same amount of ground, or be elevated, for lack of a better term, to that place if it wasn't for us sometimes having a breach or having, so to me, it goes back to set your intent and just live. Just let it be. And there are going to be ebbs and flows in what we do. And those things are what elevate us. So they're not necessarily, when we say fall, I think it says something negative that we should have avoided. But I don't think it's necessarily a negative thing.
Right.
Perhaps
Well-
another word to say is miss the mark.
Yeah.
You missed your mark. Whatever the goal was, if the goal was to be, you kind of missed that mark. Well, the issue is what you're going to do about it, because everything we do is a decision. We choose whatever, and so when we miss the mark and we come back to the point where we are aware that, oh gosh, I blew that. I really blew that. The question is, are you gonna move on and move and increase your resonance by saying, okay, my intent was not to do that. My intent was to do this, to do the right thing. That's what elevates. That's what causes you to resonate at a higher frequency. So, and we all miss the mark so many times. The question is, what do we do?
I think-
But isn't that the same thing as lowering your vibration? Because I said I used the word fall just for conversation, whatever, but
In a
it's still
sense.
lowering your vibration.
In a sense, I believe that's the difference, because the higher your frequency and your vibration, the more you're in tune with the universe and what the universe emanates. And the lower your density, it's harder for you to be in tune. And so, like that orchestra, everybody is tuned up just the right key, but yours is totally off, or mine is totally off. Then I know I'm out of sync. And so, yeah, it is a lowered vibration.
I think that the greater issue with the priest was also the fact that foreigners had contaminated the priesthood. When you said that there were those who had no lineage,
Mhm.
no historical, they had no historical pathway to the priesthood. Their ancestors had nothing to do with our spirituality. I think that also was a breach. And the reason I say that is because those priests functioned in the position of a priest until their lineage, their ancestry was observed and found, rather, because the priest said you cannot produce any proof that you have a ancestral connection to the priesthood. Therefore, you can't be a priest. Was that not a breach as well?
Well,
Agreed.
that is a breach. Yes.
And
Yes.
Pastor, is that not though? The foreigners contaminated it, but I had to receive that. I had to choose to receive that information, that contaminated word, or that contaminated quote unquote food that they were feeding me. Did I not?
Yes, but the priest is the one who contaminated you and me and all of us, because they were delivering a message that was foreign to what should have been delivered. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I was saying that all of it is basically a decision, even from the start with the priest, and then from the priest to the people.
Yeah.
And I see your point. That, the people didn't have the word to read themselves. They only had the priest through which they got their message. So I understand what you're saying.
Right.
Isn't that the difference between spirituality and religion
Yes,
also.
Yes.
definitely.
Because that's a mindset.
Yeah. And you see the difficulty with which, the difficulty that people have with accepting the truth when they have been indoctrinated so long with something totally contrary. It's very difficult.
But
Yeah,
isn't
I
it,
mean, this sounds like what we're going through right now,
Exactly what we're going through.
moving from religion to spirituality.
This
And
is exactly it.
yeah, and changing our mindset.
Yes. And matter of fact, that's what I was referencing when we talked about the priest sending the wrong, preaching the wrong message. Christianity has warped our mindset when it comes to who we were intended to be as spiritual beings, who we are intended to be as spiritual beings. And the warping of the mindset has focused our eyes on what's around us, as opposed to focusing our eye on who we are. Because when we look at the priesthood, what do we see? We see uh, I'm talking about currently. We see the priest in the pulpit delivering messages that is antithetical to who we were created to be, and still within us, there are residuals of that same message.
True. But I'm also looking at it as I mean, a wall is like a stronghold. Yes.
Yes,
Um, but for me, it's almost the reverse. I have to take down that wall of religion that's preventing me from tapping into my spirituality. So in that way, repairing the breach of my mind is tearing down some of those strongholds. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
Does that apply?
I think it does. I think it very much applies, and I think it kind of supports where we are and what we're going through now. Uh, what does Nebuchadnezzar represent? We have been captured by religion. We have been captured by something that we think is more valuable than what truth is. And it has a stronghold on us, and it has put up its own boundaries around us. Um, you look at the priesthood, from this vantage point. At the beginning, the people weren't studying the scripture like that. They totally trust the priesthood. So here comes one who says something that sounds like truth. He uses the same jargon, he uses the same phrases and the things that you're used to, but he's just a little bit off. And before you know it, you are way, something that started off as a half an inch has taken you miles and miles off a detour for where you are. So the thing that you're supposed to be valuing, the things that you are supposed to be pursuing, you're now pursuing something totally different. And not only are you pursuing, it has fully captured you, and you still think that you're following God.
May I try to present a scenario? When I look at Nebuchadnezzar now, I see Nebuchadnezzar as representing Catholicism. And out of Catholicism came all the other isms. like the Islam, Judaism, Christianity, all that came out of the same, came from the same place. And when we were conquered, when the Babylon was conquered, it was then that the priesthood became contaminated. When Stephen made the decision to be representative of Serapis, or this thing called Jesus. Now, here we are, generations from that. And we are still captured by the throes of what took place during that period. And now we are moving from Egypt. We are moving from this tight place, this place of containment and contamination. And Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, which are the three major sources of indoctrination, are being weakened. And they're being weakened because we are in search of truth. Because when we are searching for truth, when we are receiving the understanding of what truth is, it is then that we begin to realize truth in the macro weakens the lie that has been controlling for all of these centuries. And the words that we have studied in Nehemiah as well as Ezra tells us, shows us rather, that this was not, these words were not written just for that time period when they were written. These words were written for a time when the children of Babylon will come to realize who they really are. And when they realize who they really are, then they will be able to understand what these words mean. They will begin to understand that breaching the wall was not negative. Breaching the wall was tearing down the strongholds of Christianity that had us in bondage and that convinced us that we should be good little enslaved people and go along with the program. So now we are in a space where we clearly see what has happened during that period of time, and we becoming stronger in not only our beliefs, but we're becoming clear-eyed, not eyes, but clear-eyed in what we are being shown. And as a result of that, our vibration, our energy begins to shift to a place where it is in rhythm with the universe. And being in rhythm with the universe now, without even knowing it, especially the children of Babylon, are able to feel something different and sense that this is not quite right. There's something wrong with this. This is not guiding me. It doesn't feel right. My gut is telling me that there's more. And what happens outside of the church setting, those who are sensing this begin to talk about the dependencies that they have on the universe, or the energy that they're receiving from the universe, or the universe is going to guide me, the universe is going to protect me, the universe is going to provide my need. And this is coming from people who never been in the churches. So I see this whole this whole book as a reminder, books rather, as a secret pathway that has been kept away from those who have been perpetuating the lie, because they cannot see any further than history, which means that they cannot see any further than the story that they tell. as opposed to the spiritual nature of the beings in this earth. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It,
Yes,
yes.
it does.
Thank you.
So I have another question. So I was listening to when you talked about the duties of the priest. You also talked about the breastplate of the priest, the colors, the jewels.
Mhm.
Are those not frequencies, or we have the same thing? We have the same frequency that those, I mean, we have the same vibration and the frequency that those jewels, the colors have. So are we not the priest of our own soul?
First of all, if we look at the priesthood from Kemet, right? There were a group of people, Kemet, who made up the priesthood. And the priesthood was the guiding force for the entire Kushite kingdom. It was a guiding force for the kings or the pharaohs. It was a guiding force for every community, the priests were. Everybody in the community was not a priest. And if they were, then the whole kingdom would have been a kingdom of priests. What we have been taught through Christianity is you're the captain of your ship, meaning that you are the priest in your household. You are the priest in your community. If everybody is taught that they are the priests in their community, then what happens to the priesthood? The one thing that we don't want to accept, the hardest thing for Africans to accept in this country, is that there are those who the Creator has chosen to teach and to guide them from the position of priesthood. Everyone is not a priest, and everyone will never be a priest, but they will be guided by a priest if they choose to be guided by a priest. Does that make sense so far?
It does, but I don't look at it externally. I'm looking at it internally, the spiritual aspect of it.
The
So,
spiritual,
yeah, help me with that, please.
okay, the spiritual aspects of what happens with you internally is not to make you a priest, it is to make you obedient, to show you how to be obedient to the word of the Creator, the guidance of the Creator, rather. And the guidance of the Creator, through the guidance of the Creator comes through the mouth of the priest. Internally, it causes you to make a decision whether or not you're going to choose to become one with the universe or one with the Creator, however you choose to say that. That's the choice you make. But once you begin to abide by that, it still doesn't make you a priest. Example, if I am in a mechanical shop and this man owns the shop and I learn how to be a mechanic, I never become the owner. I'm not the owner of the shop. I'm still working in the shop. Again, it's difficult for us to embrace that everyone is not a priest. In Christianity, the priest was separated from the preacher. And I'm sorry, the priest was identified by the same measures of a preacher that was brought into existence by Catholicism. And the Catholicism defined what a priest was or is. And Protestants kept that meaning of what the priest is. Now, the priest is not someone who is reverenced in or who is worshipped in the way that the universe of the Creator is to be worshipped. The priest is nothing like the priest of Catholicism or the preacher of Christianity or the rabbi of Judaism or the imam of Islam. Nothing like that at all. When the Kemetic priests were teachers, as a matter of truth, when slavery ended, physical enslavement ended, put it that way. If you remember, you may not, the teachings were coming from the holy men in the community or the holy women in the community. That was during slavery, there were females who were the priests in those huts that they slept, that they stayed in. The teaching came from them. It did not come from a formal preacher type thing until later into slavery. And then you begun to get your Nat Turners, your John Brown, those kinds of folk began to come upon the scene. But the priest was different. The breastplate that you are speaking of, it is a force of energy, of rhythm with the universe. If the priest had not been in rhythm with the universe, there is no energy to light up, to cause the stones to light up. And those are metaphorically, those are metaphors rather, for what the priesthood, how the priesthood receives its guidance. So again, if priests had to have a physical breastplate with physical stones on it, then that would have been recorded at the beginning of the priesthood, and it wasn't. It wasn't. So these are metaphors that are used to explain to us the receiving of the understandings of the universe. I hope that helps. I sound like I'm just rambling or talking in circles. But
Would you align that? Would you align what you just said then with the thing that we've been talking about, that you are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, that kind of thing?
yes, I will. That was taken out of context because everybody in church is a member of the royal priesthood. And we know doggone well that that's not true. Everyone who is on this line is not the royal priesthood. There are priests, yes, but everyone on this line are not priests. And that's where we get it distorted sometimes. The priests are the ones who does the teaching, who does the priest is the one who relays the message from the creator to the people. That's the priesthood. I'm not even sure, Barb, that the word royal should even be in there, as much as the idea of the priesthood being recognized and respected as the voice of the creator encapsulated in a physical body, carrying and delivering a spiritual message. Does that help, Barb?
Yeah, because I think therein is part of what Evelyn was feeling in terms of, because we said that before. We
Yes, we have.
We are a holy nation, brother.
And on the heels of that, let me say this as well. There's two things I want to say. One, we were taught this, but simply because we were taught this, it doesn't mean that it's real. We are not what? We are not what we have been taught that we are. Yes, we said that we are a part of the royal priesthood. That is something that we had to correct. And just like many other things that we thought we knew the truth about, that we are in the process of correcting. The other thing is, I I beseech everyone to begin to, if you haven't already started, listening at the recordings. Why? Because there is so much said in the recordings until it's impossible for us to digest all of it. However, if you're listening, you can pause it when you get ready and make notes and come back with questions. Those two things will help us not only correct things like everyone being the royal priesthood, but it will also give you, those who are listening, deeper insight into what we're talking about. Ron says so frequently that he hears something, and sometimes his processing it takes him down a rabbit hole. He has to listen so he can pick up where we left off. Am I right, Ron?
Yes. Yes.
So I'm encouraging that us to do that, because we are not a lot of things that we've been told. Again, if I'm the pastor, I'm the preacher, you're more apt to follow me and do all these things that reverence me if I allow you to. That's not the priesthood. If you look at what happened, what was written, when the priesthood begins to become something other than what it was supposed to be, the bells are put on the robes so people will move out of the way when the priest walks through the shopping areas. And that in itself tells us that the priest is not supposed to place himself above the people because he's the servant. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We have too many, not too many, the majority of the priests, of the preachers does that, especially the African preacher. Nobody in the congregation can correct them. Nobody in the congregation understands with a greater clarity than they do. So maybe, just maybe, we need to dwell on this understanding of the priesthood for some time. So anyway.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Rev, you finished? Are you?
Beg your pardon?
You finished?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. One of the things that I want to add is I'm not a priest, yet I am a creator. And everyone is not going to be a priest, yet we are all creators. If Reverend Richard is the priest, I'm going to support him in being a creator. But yet I am not a priest. I've never been called a priest. Don't desire to be a priest. Yet I am a creator. And on yesterday, I was interviewed for a position, and it was an informal interview, and I was requested to be a CDT, a certified driver trainer. And I just told the person that was dialoguing with me, that's not my makeup. I'm a mentor. With that title or without that title, I'm here to serve. So, in being a creator, I can be a creator at this particular moment for all the wrong reasons at this particular moment. Yet further down the road, I could be correct in my belief of what I've said, or in being a creator, I could be right in what I'm saying, yet further down the road, I could be wrong in my belief or my saying. So I'm not a priest, but I do know this. I am a creator. And that's just how I choose to look at my position in life. We are all creators. Not all of us will be priests. Yet I do think by the title of priest or any kind of position of leadership, they do desire the aid of the Creator. I hope y'all understand what I'm saying. If not, somebody clean it up. Yet, just because you're not a priest does not take away that you cannot create and that you're not a creator. Thank you very much.
Hold 1 second. I want to explain the difference between the priest and the creator in a second. Would you continue until I get back, please? I just turned it off.
No, they turned password.
A password, bug?
Pastor, I appreciate him for uprooting what has been planted in our mind about the royal priesthood. And thank you, Barbara, for bringing that up. Yeah, I appreciate him bringing that to our attention, because a lot of things need to be uprooted. Our minds need to be transformed and whatever. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's what we've always been taught. That was enlightening for me as well. That's what we've been taught, you know. And you're right, a lot of things, and this is the season for that, to uproot and bring everything to light.
Isn't it that, in my thinking, if everyone is a priest, just like with Nehemiah and the ones who had no lineage, when everyone tries to be a priest, doesn't that create a breach? A breach in mindset, I mean.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Ron.
Yeah, I agree. That's what Barb explained. That the breach is really that mindset,
Yeah.
that different mindset that we take on. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with what you said.
Yeah, but everyone is obligated to live by the principles of Ma'at, and meaning balance, order, justice, reciprocity, righteousness. They're obligated to live by that.
Yeah.
And then the 42 affirmations are a way to remind yourself that to live by the principles. But that doesn't necessarily make you a priest. You're just obligated to live by the truth of it all, right?
And
Yes.
yes. I'm sorry, were you going to speak, George?
Yeah, no, I was just going to, concur, with Audrey. I think that as we are living in this wonderful and awesome time, we have the opportunity to return to the beginning in terms of where it all originated. And as time evolved, we see where, the writings, in Nehemiah, in the writings in the Bible, were taken and written in a way where it brought, the differences in terms of what it was originally meant to be. And I think I'm just trying to sum it up, in a way where we look at Nehemiah and we can look at, what's written. And even though the Jews, looked at it in terms of the Hebrew writings, but it was actually Aramaic. And we come to understand that, there's a difference, what I mean, during that 70-year period of exile where their understanding of what they were interpreting was wrong. And so again, as we look at scripture, or if we look at the holy books, I mean, we can begin to see that it's important for us to discern and really look at it in terms of what the original linguistic understanding or the language of what it really meant. I don't know if that resonates, but I think that in reading, Nehemiah and looking at Ezra, some of the same identical words are exactly the same. But
Yeah.
at the same time, if you look at it, it speaks of it in Aramaic in terms of the Chaldean, and then it speaks of it in terms of the Hebrew. But there was that period of 70 years of exile that it was actually the Aramaic language that was the education at that time. I don't know if that makes sense, Ron, but
It
I was
does.
just trying to refer it to we're living in a great time to really discern and understand, what the original meanings were as a Maya, etc.
Hey, quick question for you all. If you're not a priest, I'm just asking, if you're not a priest, do you still see yourself as a creator? Because therein lies that can be a civil war in all of us as individuals. When I look at the sous chef in the kitchen, the chef he is the priest, or she is the priest. Yet that sous chef has a degree of creativity in how he or she presents a plate or the meaning behind whatever they're serving. So if you don't view yourself as a priest, are you cool with I am a creator? Thank you.
Yeah. If I may, George, I concur with you. We are creators. And when we look at the two cosmic laws, of Maya, it talks about that we are the creators, right? Having a human experience. But the second cosmic law is, we are to treat the creator's creations as we treat the creator in us. So again, we have that power to create. We have that power to be in oneness, with each other. And it's just a matter of us, coming to that knowing that we are the creators. And now what are we creating? And I think that this is what, again, made me, come to understand that you have people who want to confuse you or who want to distort the truth. And I think that that's what we're coming to the realization of now when we have read scripture in the way we were taught. But we, again, are, living in a marvelous time where we're able to have our intuitive instinct discern that. And I think that what Pastor mentioned in terms of being able to go back and look at the podcast, going back and look at it and being able to pause it, being able to stop it, being able to meditate on it, I think brings us into an awareness that we can be reassured to know that we know, and being able to reach out to one another as we're doing now. I'm done. That helps, George.
Yeah. To me, from a personal aspect, is just about being comfortable in your role in humanity. At times, I am comfortable in not being the lead dog where my scenery changes every day, and be the support dog where I'm supporting that lead dog, metaphorically speaking. I just want people to buy into the concept of we are all creators, and some things that we create are not good, or some things that I create are not good. Some things that I do create is good. And a creator is a lot of responsibility comes with that. That's it, though. Thank you.
may I ask, um, were you George, speaking, George Clark, were you, speaking about the difference between the priest and the creator? Good. First of all, let me apologize. The alarm kept going off intermittently. So I was on the phone with them trying to figure out what was going on. I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
But, um,
No, Reb, it was just to bring some insight into what has been said to talk about where I am as an individual.
well, George,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Forgive me.
I think that we bring, when you mention that, it's talking about who you are individually, but I know that, I believe that we need to understand the difference collectively. Because any question that people bring is usually on the minds of someone else as well. And the answer definitely clears up things, or the response to it will clear up things in the minds of those who hear it, whether that is their question or not. That is the reason I want to make a delineation. I asked a brother about the delineation between priesthood and creator, and I was asking George Clark if that's what he was talking about when I came back.
Yes, that's what I was referring to in terms of the delineation between the two.
Okay.
I mean, again, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Everyone creates. Let me say something else to that. Everyone creates. What do I mean by everyone creates? Whether you are in the church setting, when you embrace Christianity, you still are creating something. We create the environment that we live in. Our attitude determines our actions. And the attitude, our attitude creates the energy around us. Our attitude creates circumstances that we, or our thoughts create circumstances that we have to deal with. So everyone creates. We are always creating. But everyone is not a priest. But the priest is always teaching by his presence, by his desire to understand more, by the questions that are raised. Does that make sense? Come on, guys.
And I could try to take it a step further because I had a question about that, Pastor.
Go ahead.
Would it be safe to say that if I take it down to the root of everything, we create our mindset, and that is the energy that creates the environment?
Yes.
Let's say a guy gets life in prison. It takes away a lot of his decisions and choices. However, he doesn't have to live like he's in prison. He can be free and still be in bondage physically. So his mindset creates an environment that supersedes the situation he's in.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
And I think we talk about mindset, but I don't think we recognize how important or how powerful that is.
You're right, because a Christian mindset is no different than putting you in prison and you going along with it and never seeking to rise above it or understand what all of it means. Excuse me, would you mute your phone, please? We don't think beyond where we are physically. Like, because if we really told the truth about it, when we were in church, that was rote behavior. we did the same things over and over again. And when we were much younger and asked questions, they never got addressed. So that was the sense of us staying in prison. Does
Yeah.
that, can you see that, Ron, in relationship to what you just said?
Yes, yes, I do. Thank you.
You're quite welcome, sir. Any other questions about that? Now, I want to ask a question. And I really do want response to this. Matter of fact, I need it. And that is, what did you see or hear when I made the statement that all of us are not priests? I'll mute and wait for the responses.
Well, Reb, I'll engage you. I embraced it. I saw, I embraced what you said. I had no issues with it as it relates to me directly. But I didn't have a problem with it, and I only agree with it looking at it from my situation, not looking at it from other situations. I don't necessarily align myself with the priest, yet I do align myself, if you say, a spiritual-minded individual that's always teaching. And engaging people to stay upbeat with humanity. So, and what you said, I thought was very factual. Thank you.
I guess I look at it sort of like this. Um, I agree with what you're saying, and it started my head to turning because that's something I've always been taught, and that kind of it wasn't hard to swallow, but it's like, okay, what do you see in that now? I look at a priest who that's the problem. I don't think we've always, from a spiritual perspective, understand what a priest is. We see this man walking around in a robe with his hands, folded and people following him around and him being a quote unquote spiritual leader. Uh, and now when you say that, it makes me kind of redefine or to take another look at that. And I see the role as more of someone who is who experiences feeling that type of love and intimacy as a father and a mother would for everybody, and not necessarily a title or and I'm not sure everybody can get to that elevation, but I see it as something far more than just a title of somebody carrying out certain rituals.
Well, Ron, I think that's the problem right there. I think religion looks at the priest as a man, based upon what you said. Yet spirituality looks at a priest as anyone who is breathing, male, female, child. And I think that's the problem. We're looking at religion emphasizes the priest as man, a male, and that alone can present a problem. Yet by way of spirituality, I view a priest, male, female,
So
in
someone who's
shape, out of
balanced.
shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think that's the problem that that some people can have. They're looking at the priest from a man's standpoint. A man can only be a priest, which is far from the truth by way of a cable line. I do believe the 42 Laws of Maya was brought in by a female, So if we look at it from a religious standpoint, or by way of United Methodists, the priest is the man. Yet if we look at it from a spiritual concept, everyone can be a priest. That's all I had to say, boss.
Okay. First of all,
Pastor,
what, huh?
I think Audrey has something to say before
Oh,
you.
okay, Audrey, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that I'd never thought about this in this way until we've just been discussing it, but I think the priest is someone who has had legitimate, intimate relationships with the Creator, who's had that experience, as opposed to just an experience with religion. And I was saying earlier that I don't think everyone can be a priest, but everyone is obligated to follow the principles of Ma'at, and so that they can be a creator in their own personal space or in their own personal environment. But I think the priest has to be someone who has had an intimate relationship with the Creator, who has a mindset for people in terms of their well-being, their own personal spiritual experience, and who's there to help develop that. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you. I agree with you. But I think the intimate relationship, Audrey, is on a continuous basis. His whole life is based upon the intimate relationship that they have with the Creator. Priest, preacher, Christianity.
Pastor,
Yeah.
excuse me. Good morning. This is Kathy. Before you go into the explanation and draw it out a little more, I wanted to add one other thought as I'm listening to the conversation today. And I guess I see it just a little bit differently. I agree with everything that's been said, and especially about the intimate relationship. But when I think back to Nehemiah 8, and we looked at all of those names of the people who were there when the people heard the law, those names, remember, meant, all of those names, different names, meant deliverance. And so if that teacher, that priest, is someone that has the spiritual ability to transport you to a place of deliverance, to free your mindset from bondage, not everybody can do that. And so it has to be, in my opinion, it has to be someone that has the intimacy by all means and the experience that you've had from understanding spiritual things, but you have the ability, like the principles of Ma'at and all these things that we keep referencing, those things are put in place to help us to stay in a place of deliverance and understand who we are. And so, but it takes a priest / teacher, if I'm saying it correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, to help the people to have a mindset to be able to transport them from where they've been mired in thinking the wrong way, or mired in even just, let's say, religion, let's just say it that way, to a place of freedom, to a place of deliverance, to be able to embrace the principles of Ma'at, and to be able to create from a place of spirituality, because we learned a long time ago, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in, you are a creator, and you're going to create the environment that you live in, be it an environment of freedom or be in an environment of bondage. You're going to create something by very nature of the fact that you are a creator. But I see the ability of the priest is to help change that mindset to the place where you have the freedom to create spiritually and understand what you're doing now because of the teachings that you received. And I just wanted to add that, so thank you.
Thank you. However, let me delete one thing. That's not an opinion, that's a reality. So it goes far beyond just an opinion, okay?
Okay.
The other thing is that a priest / teacher, priest could not be a priest if the priest does not teach. A teacher can teach, but not be a priest. What has taken place is Catholicism called its leadership priests in the beginning. And then later on, they called the chief priest pontiff or pope, one who is the substitute for God, which diminishes and the priesthood and is sacrilegious, to say the least. Because you're saying that a physical man takes the place of God, as opposed to understanding that the spiritual being is God. Does that make sense so far? Because I'm not finished. Come on, guys.
Yes.
Now, when the Protestants separated from Catholicism, the Protestant began to use priest as a dirty word when it came to the Catholic priests. And they called themselves preachers, and they called themselves bishops. However, the etymology of the word bishop means one who oversees preachers, not churches. One who helped preachers get through trials and tribulations. That's what that word means or signifies. So we have been taken into a space of confusion on purpose. When people are confused, they don't know which direction to go in. So this whole idea of priest or preacher must be revisited so that we understand that a priest is not that person that runs described with their robe and hands folded and a backwards collar and all this piety, while at the same time being behind all the murders that has taken place, the genocides around the world. The priest, the preacher, on the other hand, guess what the preacher is? The preacher has been designated by the enslavers to keep the people who are enslaved in bondage. You're going to understand it by and by. You might not be free here on earth, but when you die, you're going to be free with Jesus. That's crazy. The preacher is an overseer. I did not understand that. And there were some things that I undertook that would undo the preacher that I was. And that was when no more anniversaries, no choirs. All we're going to do is teach. That was undoing the bondage of the preacher. That the preacher keeps us in because the preacher has no answers and doesn't even search for answers. The priest does. Does that make sense? Come on, guys. All of us been in church. All of us have had these experiences. Can you see that clearly?
Yes.
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 Okay, so what do we?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So one day you walked in Foundation and you said, suppose if man was the Bible. And we like, okay. So my question to you is, are we not the concepts that's in the Bible if that's who we are?
Yeah,
I hear
got you.
everything that everybody's saying, but I need you to explain that to me, please, sir.
Yes, ma'am. When I said that, I didn't know I didn't know what I was talking about. I just knew that we were created. And all that, let me back up. All that came from what is it, John, first chapter, when they talk about the word. And the word was him, he was the word, and the word was him, that kind of thing. All of us is the word, is what I was talking about at that moment. Right now, what I see even clearer is that all of us are spiritual beings who are guided by those who have a continuous, intimate relationship, as Audrey said, with the Creator. That is not true with everyone. When people are raising questions, the priest has to either answer those questions, or the priest has to search for those answers, or the priest has to simply say, as Ron did to Charles the other day, we have not felt it yet. That was the time we would have done the research. You know what I'm saying? And what would we do? We would chase the words, but we would not necessarily see the spirituality in it. The priest does that. The priest says, no, right now I don't see it. However, when someone feels it, who are the someones who feels it? Who are someone who experiences it and says, oh, this is what this means? As when Barbara looked at the breach, that was a priest who has been in constant relationship with the divine, with the Creator, and is able to see the spiritual nature of the breach. Each time that we look at the scriptures, or someone raises a question in regards to them or anything for that matter, and we began to see the truth in that, that's the priestly responsibility. Kathy did the thing on Nehemiah 8. And what happened? The priest brought consolation and comfort to those who were uneasy about the election. All of these examples, can you see clearly what I'm trying to say about the priest?
Well, that's better now because, yeah, that's much better. So let me ask, what you're saying, how does that relate to when you say, and he gave some pastors, teachers, apostles, I don't know the rest of them, but is that the same thing, what you're saying?
Yeah, because all of the words that you are talking about relates to actions as opposed to titles. It is said that an apostle established churches. That is not true. The ones who they call apostle, look at what they did. You will not find one apostle. I ain't talking about Paul. You will not find one who was deemed an apostle who established a church. Even in what was that? When
Edifice.
person in
These-
Acts, they were first called Christians.
Yeah.
They were first called Messiahs. Now you have to understand what does Messiah mean. So we have been wrongly taught, and there are still portions of what we were taught in us. And that is the reason I say it is almost imperative to listen at what the recordings again. The major purpose for the recordings is not for us to reach other people. The main reason for the recordings has always been so we can revisit them to hear what was said that we missed. And if we were not present when it was said, we can listen to them and hear what was said. And that way we can have questions about it, but we don't have to go all over it again. Does that make sense? All of this.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so all of the stuff, all of the things that we do, we make every effort to do it predicated on the priesthood, even though we did not know that, so that's what we were doing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
having said all of that, I hope that is clearer about the priesthood / preacher, clearer about what the priest looks like, what the priest is responsible for, and how the priest becomes a priest. Everyone does not see what the priest sees, but the priest opens your eye so you can begin to see who you are and what you are to create in your environment. Questions, comments?
Well, Pastor Jay, I just want to say I thank you for the clarity because I did have a lot of questions and they were answered. I really do appreciate it. I take my spiritual life very seriously, and I just want to let you know I really appreciate what everyone has said. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it, raising the questions. Is there anyone else? If you need clarity on something, if you don't understand it, just say what you don't understand or what you need clarity on. If you need clarity later on, please don't try to remember it. Make a note so that we can address it. Okay? Ron?
Yes, sir. I have a question that I like some more. Based on this conversation here, we've talked about the truth that's in the scriptures and how we have to pull it out. When that breastplate that the priests that was designed, talked about in Exodus, I think it is. When I looked at that a little closer, I have to admit it reminded me of the 42 laws of Mayat, in principle. And that may be where it got its origin, because when you look at what it's saying, the 12 stones, representing the 12 tribes or the 12 nations. Um, excuse me. When you the if you look at those sons, the nations, they represent greed. They were kidnappers. They were murderers. Uh, they had a negative side and a positive side. So that part says to me, you should have a heart for everyone and see them for what they can potentially become and not be judgmental in that regard. I did not look up the 12 stones, but I thought they meant purity and power, and I meant to look those up and I get that from something I wrote down when we were talking about the streets of gold when we were looking at Revelation some time ago. The two stones that the Urim represents enlightenment. It represents to illuminate something. The other one, the Thummim represents perfection or to be completely truth, to be upright. So all of us have these qualities. Like, for example, you following this, and we've been on this journey for so long. There is something in you that no one else can reach but you, that you know when you are sincere about this journey. You know if you are sincere about how you feel, what you feel about someone or about something, or no matter what comes out of our mouths, we know if we are what we have other ulterior motives or not. So when I saw that, it's talking about how you treat people and the sincerity in which goes into it should come from your heart, not a physical breastplate, but you're wearing this over your heart. And the metaphor is this is what comes out of your heart. So I saw that and I thought that was beautifully done. And to look at that, what I'm just kind of comparing that to it made me see that the 42 laws of Mayat is judging and seeing people in those same light. How sincere am I? How sincere am I with who I am? Because if I'm sincere about who I am, it's how I'm going to treat or everybody else. So I just speak to that for a minute, if you will, because I think a lot of what's in the scriptures are stories that were copied from things that were truths, and in their own way, they kind of manipulated things that way. And I hope I'm not rambling, but go ahead and if you see what I'm talking about, Pastor.
Okay. The manipulation comes from someone someone's who did not understand what they were reading. So they wrote what they thought it should be in a physical sense, not spiritual. For the reason of control. Okay. When you talk about the representation in the scriptures of actions of other people and how we respond to them, it is true that we should never judge someone based on our criteria for what they should be. Forgiveness does not come with a caveat of exception. In a courtroom, if you sit in a courtroom and you listen at the prosecutor present his case, you'd be like, oh my God, there's no way that they're not guilty. But then when the defendant's case is presented and you begin to see that there was a reason for what happened, and that reason is the proven truth about the evidence that's been presented. You've heard two different things. In the beginning, you heard a prosecution. And all of it sound plausible.
Mhm.
But when you hear the defense, it's totally different. Now, is the person guilty or not? That's not your question. Your response is forgiveness. That person goes to jail. That person comes out of jail. And the question becomes, do we say to our children or to us in the church, you need to stay out of the world, don't associate with that person? However, if we know the truth, if we are the priesthood, then how is it that this person is going to see value in itself if it does not receive the truth from those who know the truth? If you flip the coin to what we were taught through Christianity, that person, you stay away from them because they can taint you. You don't want to be caught, you don't want to be seen with them. You don't want to be caught up in what they are doing. Well, if you are the priest, if you know that you're the creator, if you know who you are, then regardless of what that person says or does, it cannot overtake you knowing who you are. You should be the one who's able to influence that person who just left the jail. Does that make sense? The prison.
Mhm.
So we have a responsibility, and that responsibility is not to judge Donald Trump, because it is not him. It's not him at all. It's the principles. So we're not judging Trump. We are dealing with the principles. Judge ye not, lest you are judged by the same judgment that you mete out. In other words, judge ye not unless you are willing to be judged by the method of your judgment. If you are looking at those principles and you know what the truth is, and those principles are detrimental to humanity, then you are obligated to make a judgment about those principles. And in doing so, you are not uncomfortable with being judged by the principles of truth. So when your principles are judged, your principles of truth, there is no fault in them. And that's what helps people change. But if we judge people instead of the principles, then therein lies the error, because we see the person with our eyes, but we see the principle with our eye. Trump represents principles that has kept the world in bondage. Biden represents principles that kept the world in bondage by lying to it. Trump represents the principles that kept the world in bondage through physical methods by making it hard for them to live.
Yeah.
So when we change these principles, when we deal with what we're dealing with, every single time that we see truth, every single time, it has an impact, a positive impact on the principles that has been detrimental to humanity. So I know I've said a lot of words, but this whole idea of the breastplate of the Enlightenment is not only for us, but for those who does not know what enlightenment is. This is a metaphor for it. Where they got this from probably was the priesthood in Egypt. I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah, I believe that.
I don't doubt that. One other thing. The priests of the Old Testament died out with Jesus or was ended with Jesus according to Christianity. Am I right? Come on, y'all. They died out with Jesus. So what we're saying is that the priesthood came to an end based on a lie. Serapis, Jesus not existing, that thing. So who ended the priesthood based on Jesus? The enslavers. To the African, the priesthood never ended. You can call it holy man, you can call it what you want to, but the priesthood never ended. The only way that Africans believe that priesthood ended is because they have embraced Christianity. If they embrace the spiritual teachings of a Kabbalah, the principles of Mayat, the priesthood, you become more aware of the reality of the priesthood as opposed to it having ended. Can you see this right now? So, where are we? We are not basing principles on Old Testament or New Testament. We are mining these words for truth, the truth that was left in them. That's what we are doing. Because our priesthood, our principles of the priesthood are based upon the writings, the sacred writings of Kemet. And with them being based upon the sacred writings of Kemet, that says to us that our goal is to have an understanding, spiritual understanding, not in our minds, but spiritual understanding of the Kemetic priesthood. Because the Kemetic priesthood influenced the entire Kushite kingdom. And as there was movement from the portion of Akabalon that the kingdom existed, when they began to move into different places, expand their space, those principles were carried with them. And that is the reason, regardless of the group of people, I don't like that word tribe, but regardless of the group of people, they all believed in one divinity. Yet, if they used an example of a spiritual being to represent a principle, they were called, that it was said rather, that they worshiped multiple gods. When that is not true. Christianity worshiped multiple gods. Christianity worshiped idol gods. If you think that Christianity does not worship idol gods, put some on the communion table. Or walk in the pulpit and you're not a preacher. Look at those examples. You cannot curse on church ground, but you can on the other ground. You're not gonna smoke on church ground, but you can smoke anywhere else. You can step off into the street and smoke, but you can't step back and not. That's crazy. That's idolatry. In order to avoid idolatry, we must return to understanding that the priest is the one who is the officiant for what the Creator desires of its creation. It's a reminder. It was the priest who taught. It was the priest who developed the first calendar. It was the priest who recognized that the sun travels south over 12 months and stops for 3 days and begins to its journey back to the north. It was the priest who saw that. It was the preacher. It was the Catholic person who called itself a priest who said that this was a period of worship. I'm sorry, this was the period in which Jesus was born. It was the religious folk who did not understand the movement of the heavenly bodies and the purpose of them. And it was the religious people who diminished the power or sought to diminish the power of the true priesthood because they wanted to usurp it. From the beginning, the whole reason that Telemi, right? Help me, someone. So anyway, the first European pharaoh, the first thing that European pharaoh wanted to be was God. That pharaoh saw the priests as God. That's why he wanted to be God. And, and began to develop a God complex that ended up being what we call Christianity now, or Catholicism. There has never been an understanding of true spirituality on the part of those who brought into existence Catholicism / Christianity, all the isms, Judaism, Islam, etc. So here we are. Here we are, priests in a priestly environment where the priesthood is being reintroduced to those who seek to travel the journey of truth. The priesthood recognizing that it has a responsibility to maintain this continuous intimate relationship with the Creator for the express purpose of ending the bondage of humanity, of ending the genocide in this earth, bringing forth an understanding of the value of all life, bringing forth an understanding of the value in humanity. Christians don't believe in the value of humanity. The moment you mess up, you're a sinner and you're cast aside. You raise questions, you're being disrespectful. I'm done. Questions, comments? Okay, Ron.
uh, recognize the value of all human life. When you cease to pursue that intimate relationship with the Creator, that is what causes the breach, correct? And
Yes.
that is what starts the downward spiral as to I can say the right words, but they lose their meaning because my motives are different. If I'm a priest, I still might open the book and talk about scripture, but it has no meaning to it because I'm not I'm in a different mindset and I don't have the same motives that I once did. So
Okay.
you talk about this and that puts a tremendous responsibility on those who are priests.
I don't quite see it that way.
Okay.
If you are a priest, you know what the truth is. And if you choose to tell a lie rather than the truth, then yes, you are a breach. However, every preacher, every Catholic priest, every imam, all of these people who teach in these different religious environments, every one of them are the breach. We were the breach until we started this journey of understanding what truth is. Think about this. We've been at this for years. And the first thing that we saw when we came together as teachers, what did we see? First thing that we saw was the scripture was in error when it says that only a woman can be adulterous. You guys remember that?
I sure do.
Yes, yes, we do.
So, understanding that, then the first thing we actually did was remove the stigma from the cosmic mother. We did that, but continue. That was our first really awareness of the priesthood, but we didn't know at that time. So from that point forward, we were being trained to be priests. Why do I say that? This is the first time that we have ever looked at the priesthood the way we're seeing it today. So that tells me that we are aware now that we of being a priest, and knowing that says also to me that the universe, for lack of a better term, has ordained us to be as priests, or making us aware of being priests, or laid hands on us, meaning that granted the authority of the priesthood. Today, we see the clarity of the authority of a priest. Can you see that?
Yes.
And yes, it is, Ron, an awesome responsibility. It's a responsibility anytime that you are a servant to humanity. That's a awesome responsibility. It's a heavy load to carry.
Yeah.
Yet, the shoulders of the priest were made for such a time as this, to carry the burden of humanity and transform it into a life of freedom. Questions, comments? Is that responding to what you're raising up?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ron.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's GC
Yes,
from
sir.
Philly. You know, when you were speaking, you know, Pastor, in terms of the Kemetic priesthood and the time that we are presently in, you know, there's the Kemetic term called Kepera Kepsepi. And we've talked about it before in terms of the process of becoming for the first time. And so as we look at this Kemetic priesthood and begin to, you know, appreciate the journey that we on, would this be, you know, that appointed time that we need to, you know, appreciate not only who we are, but the opportunity to be able to have better clarity on appreciating our beginnings in terms of the teachings. Does
Yes,
that
sir.
resonate, Pastor?
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I mean, would that, you know, be what you're saying today, that we are in the process, you know, of coming for the first time to really have a better understanding of the Kemetic teachings and the philosophies with regards to, you know, this understanding?
Yes, sir. The becoming. The reason that the term becoming is there is because we are always in the process of becoming. What keeps us in the process of becoming is there is always more to see, more to be made aware of, more to understand. So we are always in the process of becoming. We have not arrived. Does that make sense, George?
No, that makes sense, because, you know, when we, you know, look at, you know, the Kush and Kemetic beginnings, I mean, some 2,000 years before Christianity, but it talked about, you know, again, you know, the city-state Hecapata. And, you know, what I'm, you know, trying to just grasp in my spirit is to be able to appreciate, you know, the language, or be able to appreciate the beginning that we can, you know, build our foundation on, in terms of having more of an understanding of what the truth was, and the truth is in terms of where we move from here, moving forward.
And we are always moving forward. Yes, sir. George, we are.
Okay.
You're right. We're always moving forward. And for those who may not know, when he said Hakupata, that's the same as Kemet. That's the thing. That's the name that they have given to. They call it Egypt, but it's either Kemet or Hakupata.
So Hakupata before it was Kemet.
Yes.
Okay.
The Hakupata designated this space, this block of land. Hakupata designated the Menes, the pharaoh Menes, designated this as the home, for lack of a better term, of spirituality, by saying Hakupata. Once you pass, that was the hill of of Ptah. Once you entered this land, going beyond this hill of Ptah, then you were in the area of the priesthood. In the Kushite kingdom, the priesthood was given this city-state, this space of land, so that it would not be distracted from everything else in the kingdom, and was able to have a consistent consistent unicity with the Creator. And they became known as the space became known also as Kemet. And then because because the Greeks could not say the word Hakupata, so they start calling it Egypt. That's where the word Egypt, the name Egypt came from.
Pastor,
Yes.
I have a question. If I heard you correctly earlier, and it's been a while back that you said this, and I'm thinking about it now. Did I hear you correctly when you said something along the lines of, you said something that made it sound like a person could be taught to become a priest, if I heard you correctly? And
Okay.
if that is what you said, then my question becomes, what about what we've been taught about being chosen? And what about the lineage of Melchizedek and all of that? So could you clear that up? Because I don't remember how you said it, but it made it sound like you could be taught to become a priest.
Okay, that's a heap much stuff to address. However, I'll make every effort. Right now, we have to look at how did we become teachers / priests or whatever. How did we do that? The teachings came from seeking the true nature of what was being said in the scriptures, right? And seeking that, we moved from simply looking at words in a concordance and holding on to Christianity. We moved from that to becoming aware of our spiritual essence. We, during the period that we were looking in the concordance, we were in Egypt. We were in a cramped space. We were in a space. We were in this space that is attributed to this guy, Moses, learning religion, learning the depth of the understandings of religion, so that we would be able to see more clearly the spirituality of everything when we disconnected from the bondage of Christianity. During this period of time, we were being taught to be priests. You cannot be a priest if you don't understand religion, because it's difficult, if not impossible, to teach people who are steeped in religion what the truth is if you don't understand what they steeped in. It's just no coincidence that the overwhelming majority of us were teachers in those settings. Now, being trained to be a priest, what happens is there are people who are listening to us. There are people in the macro who will become priests. Let me say this. I'm trying to find a way to say it. What the heck with it? I'm just gonna say it, okay? How you take it is how you take it. The Creator granted me the privilege to choose those who were to realize, become aware that they were priests. And every single person who is a teacher came a different way. And if you guys think about what happened during the period when that was shown, you would see that it's not the same for everyone. I believe that They took the writings of Kemet, attributed them to Jesus, and talked about Jesus having 12 disciples. When in essence, it was a priest who was bringing into existence a priesthood for the express purpose of teaching. Teaching what? Teaching about divinity. The calendar was divine because it was one with the universe, or is one with the universe. The teachings about the human body, Imhotep, that was about the universe, the body itself. History was a reminder of where you came from. It was stronger than the genealogy. It was ancestral understandings. So what I'm saying is, I don't remember, Kathy, how I said it earlier. But what I'm saying is that we are being taught to be priests in the becoming. We are taught to be that we are becoming priests because it's a continuous effort. There are those who will carry on the priesthood. Who they are, I don't know. All I can say is that the ones who were chosen simply because the Creator impressed upon my soul, my heart, that these are the people who was to be here. And if you guys remember, there were those who taught and they fell by the wayside or they walked away. Why? Because they were not intended to be priests. So are there further questions to push it forward, Kathy?
Well, I understand everything you said, and that makes sense. But I have one question about what you just said, one other question. So when you said the teachings were attributed to Jesus that were coming from the priest, is that Melchizedek that you're referencing, or what priest?
Okay. When it talks about Melchizedek, it said that he has no beginning and no end, right? No one knows where Melchizedek came from. That's the priest. The beginning of the priest is spiritual. The embodiment, meaning that the energy of the priest is in a physical body. So talking to Abraham, Abraham, right? Yeah. And that energy dissipates. The priesthood is still there in a spiritual form. And now Abraham has rather a greater understanding of the priesthood. Abraham, non-existent, is simply a story about the development, the movement of the priesthood. And Lot having to separate from Abraham, and Abraham saying to Lot, you choose and I'll take what's left. Why? Because he's saying to what's happening is there are those in your life who are going to be a distraction to you as you are in the process of becoming. And those distractions that are in your life, you must separate those distractions from you. And you don't separate those distractions by getting angry with anyone. You recognize it. Abraham, it's a story about recognizing what distracts you and moving away from it. And that is seen when I made the statement a few days ago, that your priorities have to be revisited. And if your primary priority is not spiritual understanding, seeking the truth, seeking to teach, to put the truth out there for everyone to grasp. If that is not your primary reasoning, then it's impossible to be a priest. Why? Because if you don't, if that's not your priority, you will not hear things like what Evelyn said earlier, how important to her this spiritual journey is. The priest is the one who guides the nation, meaning the kingdom of the Cushites. The priests, what does that mean? How does that happen? The priests are the ones who are teachers, the principles of Mayat from the beginning. And that is what holds the kingdom together. Because the principles are taught from what's that, age 2, Ron?
Age 2.
The principles are taught from age 2. So you grow up with that. That's what holds the kingdom together. That's what strengthens the kingdom. And that is seen because during the period of the Kemetic priesthood, during the period of the Cushite kingdom, there were no prisons, there were no policemen. There was no need for doctors until they came in contact with Europeans. They dealt with the body themselves. There was no courts system. There was no thievery because everyone was taken care of. All the things that we deal with now that involve a judicial system did not exist. Deeds for land did not exist. Does that make sense? Huh?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I have a question. Could Melchizedek have been a priest of Kemet?
Very much so. Very much so. I now that you mention it, I can embrace that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Could Audrey be a priest of Kemet? Yes.
Is that a question?
I was questioning you. It really was rhetorical. We have to ask ourselves that, you know? As I was a bit uncomfortable talking about how the teachers, the priests were brought into this space that we occupy. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to say, I'm a priest. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to say, the Creator showed me who the priests were to be. The Creator showed me who the teachers were to be. Because we have been taught so frequently. When you say things like that, the words of the guy who pastored me comes back to me. Who do you think you are? What makes you so special? I didn't respond. But maybe I should have, but I didn't. Because some things you don't dignify with the response. I know who I am, and I've known it for a long time, but I didn't talk about it because I have been taught, as most of us have, who do you think you are? And even now, there's some discomfort in what I expressed about having been given the authority to choose the priesthood that currently exists. So I want us to move beyond the discomfort in admitting who we are. Why? Because that means you have some discomfort with the truth. If you know who you are, am I right?
Yes.
If you have discomfort with, if we have discomfort with making those statements, that's simply because the lie has made us uncomfortable and not the truth. Now, don't get me wrong. The expectation is not for you to be walking around, I'm a priest. No, do the work. And others will see it in you. However, if it comes to a place where you have to deal with who you are, do it. And then you become more comfortable with it.
Can I please ask if Kathy is okay with her question? Kathy, what was your question? Do you have a
Yeah,
follow-up?
I think that answered it. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, where did it come from when we were meeting and Linda said, I heard Courageous say, it's a win-win. WIN means that you've already won. WHEN says don't be concerned about the win of the manifestation of the victory. Where do you think those kinds of things come from? Okay. I was done, boss. Unless there are questions or comments.
Okay. Good job, y'all. Good energy. Good place to pause it for today and enjoy the rest of your day and look forward to tomorrow morning. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Take care, family.
Have a good day.